welcome or welcome back to the Infinite Library, and we are at a whole new year, which means a whole new bunch of book releases are coming out. So I have put together a little list. We have like over 50 books in this video, probably closer to 60 to be honest, of a whole bunch of releases that are coming out in the new year, which I'm personally very excited about. These are all books that, if not books I am desperate to read, books that are on my radar to read. A lot of these are fantasy, but I have thrown in a couple of other genres in here as well, such as horror, sci-fi, the occasional romance. As soon as I'm admitting to myself that I don't mind romance occasionally, but it is going to be mostly fantasy books that I personally think sound really good. So we're going to go through these fairly quickly, and I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible because we have an awful lot to get through. So to begin, I just want to shout out about a very late 2024 release that has only just come out, just in case you weren't aware of it. But Heavenly Tyrant by Ziran J. Zhao is finally out. This is the sequel to Iron Widow. It is a YA close to adult, to be honest though, like sci-fi fantasy about a girl that gets revenge in the best way possible. It also has polyamory. I love the throuple in this first book, and I'm so excited to find out what happens in the second book. It is a 2024 release, but it's come out like so late that I'm just going to put it in this video anyway, just in case you weren't aware this was out. So excited to read this. Okay, getting into the actual releases then. So we are beginning in January. I'm going to go through these month by month. Some of these books I am more excited for than others, not gonna lie. Some of these I just read the premise and was like, sounds good, I'm in for this. So the first book we have is actually releasing on January the 2nd, and that is A Language of Dragons by S.F. Williamson. This is a debut author, I believe. January the 2nd, or it could be January the 4th, I'm not entirely sure. I know that if you have a specific book box, then you will already have this book because they got it early. So this is a dark academia dragon fantasy set in 1900s London. So it is a debut author, but I've been hearing really good things about this. The cover is gorgeous and I am intrigued. I am just really wanting more good dragon books, to be honest, because I feel like I've been very disappointed by the dragon books I've had in the past. Then, releasing on January the 7th, we have the new book by Su Lin Tan, who was the author of Daughter of the Moon Goddess. She has a new book coming out called Immortal. This is a standalone romantasy about a woman ascending to the throne and having to deal with immortals. I'm imagining she's probably going to get herself into a romance with an immortal, which I guess are kind of like her enemies or rivals or something. I'm intrigued. I still have yet to read anything by this author, but this is actually going to be my first book I am reading in 2025. So I'm hoping that if I like this, I will also be very down to read Immortal. Next, also on January the 7th, we have the latest book by Shauna Maguire in her Wayward Children series. This is Adrift in Currents, Clean and Clear. We are following Nadia in this book. If you don't know about this series, this is a series of novellas, which is portal fantasy. Basically about what happens to kids after they've gone and they're like, we've visited another Fantasyland adventure and come back home, and trying to deal with the repercussions of that and not being able to adjust to normal life again. I've only read one book in this series, but I absolutely adored it. I am desperate to get to the rest of the books in this year. This is going to be the 10th book in the series. Next, on January the 14th, which is a very big day, there are so many books coming out on January the 14th. It's insane. We have the first horror of the year that I am excited for. I say excited, I am tempering my expectations, to be honest, because it is by Grady Hendrix, and I have a checkered past with Grady Hendrix, shall we say. I didn't really enjoy Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires or How to Sell a Haunted House, but I love My Best Friend's Exorcism. It was like one of my favourite books of the year, and I really enjoyed the Final Girl Support Group, I think it was, as well. So this is a new book by Grady Hendrix, and it is, I put it down here as being a witchy horror. It's not so much that, to be honest. It's set in the 70s. I'd say the concept is a little bit problematic, which is why I'm a little bit unsure about this one. Basically, this is about a group of girls who have been sent to reform school of sorts because they're all pregnant, and they are supposed to be like mending their ways or something, whilst I assume they are supposed to have their babies and then go back to their normal life. It is about them beginning to get in charge of their autonomy again, and they find a witchy occult book. It does sound interesting, but I'm just a little bit worried about what Grady's going to do in terms of the pregnancy aspect. I think it could be a little bit problematic, but I'm willing to check him out anyway because he has still written some of my favourite books. Also, on January the 14th, we have something that I technically could preview because I have a chapter sampler for it, and it is The Favourites by Lane Fargo. This is an interesting one for me because this is a straight up contemporary romance, which is not usually my vibe, but there's a few things about this one in particular that have kind of intrigued me. First off, it's an ice skating romance. I really love ice skating. I will probably pick up anything that has to do with ice skating. I'm probably going to pick up that Icebreaker book at some point, even though I'll probably hate it, just because it's got ice skating in it. But it is about a pair of figure skaters who, I believe this is told afterwards, like after the events of whatever happens in like interviews and stuff, and it's inspired by Wuthering Heights in terms of the storyline, and that just intrigues me. It says on the chapter sampler, lace up for an epic love story that reimagines the tempestuous romance of Wuthering Heights in the sparkling savage world of elite figure skating. I'm intrigued. I feel this is a book that I'm either gonna hate or I'm gonna really like, but I'm gonna put it out there anyway as a I could like it kind of book. I'm hoping I do. Next, also on 14th of January, we have Water Moon by Samantha Soto-Yambao. This is a debut book, but it's been getting a lot of hype. This has basically been described as very Ghibli-like. So it is a cozy fantasy, I believe set in Japan, about a woman who I think owns a pawn shop and magical shenanigans ensue. It sounds really good. Yalk had a really cool vendor stand for it, which looked gorgeous. It's going to be in some book boxes. It's getting a lot of hype. I really hope it's going to be good. You never know the debut, to be honest. Like, are they just being bigged up and it's not going to be great? But I have fingers crossed, because if it's good, it's going to be so good. Next, also another one that was making a lot of waves at Yalk was Daughter of Chaos by A.S. Webb, also out on either January the 14th or the 16th. I'm not sure. Goodreads has different dates. This is also a Greek myth inspired fantasy about a woman called Danae who wants to hunt down the gods. I love the cover for this one, I will say. They had a really cool thing at Yalk where you were basically picking out golden apples to win a proof of it. I sadly did not win a proof, but it looks really good. I'm kind of getting back into Greek myth retellings again after being very bored of them, and this one does sound really interesting. And not gonna lie, one of my good friends is called Danae, and I just want to read the book because this character shares her name. So yeah, I don't really remember a lot about this. She hunts down gods. That's all I know. All I need to know, to be honest, at this point. Also on the 14th of January, we have a debut book that I am intrigued by, called Lightfall by Ed Crocker. This is a epic fantasy trilogy, or the start of one, and it looked at first like it was going to be kind of typical dark fantasy until I find out this is about a rebellion of vampire maids. Yes, that's all I need to know. I'm down for this book. And then the final release on the 14th of January is one that I'm just kind of intrigued by. I think it could be really good, but I don't know, because again, this is an author who was a first-time author, and this is actually written by a drag queen called Holly Stars, and it is Murder in the Dressing Room, and it is a cozy mystery starring a drag queen as the main character. I think it could be really fun. I don't know if it's going to be good or not, but I'm honestly just kind of sold on the premise, and the cover looks great. 16th of January, we have The Baby Dragon Cafe by A.T. Queerish. This is giving me cozy fantasy vibes. Not gonna lie, I really thought this was a graphic novel just by looking at the cover, but I think it is actually a novel. It's also really giving me a magical tea dragon, this book vibes as well, which if it's anything like that, I'm sure I'll love. Then also on the 16th of January, we have a literary sci-fi releasing called Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. This is by the author of Binti, which I haven't read yet, but I've heard really good things about, and it just sounds really interesting. It is basically about a woman who is an author, and she is writing something very out of her wheelhouse, which I believe is sci-fi, and it begins to blur between fiction and reality. as she is writing this book, and I'm just really intrigued by it. January the 21st, we have the third book in the Fourth Wing, the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros, Onyx Storm. I haven't read Iron Flame yet, so I don't even know if this is a series I'm going to be continuing. I'm hoping I'll like Iron Flame when I get to it. I don't know if Onyx Storm is going to be the finale in the series or if we're keeping going at this point. I don't love the cover for it, I will say. But I really loved Fourth Wing. This was, if you don't remember, it came out like the year before last, I think. It is a dragon romantasy, and I had a good time with it. So I am excited for this. Releasing in January the 21st, or possibly earlier, because I saw this in Waterstones the other day. So I'm thinking it's had an early release in the UK, and maybe this is the American date. But we have The Rainfall Market by Yo Young-gwang. This is a Korean cozy fantasy. It kind of sounds a little bit like The Midnight Library to me, but with a magical cat companion, and that just automatically makes everything so much better. This sounds really cute. It also sounds like it could be depressing because Midnight Library vibes, but it has been described as being cozy fantasy, so I am really intrigued about this one and want to give it a try. Next, we have a book coming out on January the 23rd. This is one that's been getting a lot of hype. It has a beautiful cover, as you can see, and that is Cruel is the Light by Sophie Clark. So this is a YA romantasy, and honestly, I wasn't fussed about this one just looking at the cover, and then I read a bit further and I'm kind of intrigued. So this is about an exorcist and a soldier investigating mysteries at the Vatican, and I'm kind of intrigued by that, not gonna lie. Like, I thought it was going to be like a random place, but we're going to the Vatican. So yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm gonna try it. I don't know if I'm gonna like it, but I'm intrigued enough to try that out because it sounds like it could be very fun. Honestly, it sounds like it could be what I wanted the Foxglove King to be and didn't get, so we'll see. The last one for January now, coming out on the 28th, and I actually have a copy of this one because I got an ARC, and that is I Am Not Jessica Chen by Anne Liang. Anne Liang is a very kind of popular YA romance author, but she's going in a little bit more of an unusual thriller territory with this book, and I'm very intrigued by it. This is telling the story of Jenna Chen, who envies her cousin Jessica a lot. Jessica is kind of very popular. She has like a very charmed life, and then she wakes up one day and she has basically replaced Jessica, and the real Jessica is gone. Nowhere to be found. And she's discovering that whilst she is now popular and loved by all, there is a lot more to it than she expected, and things are not quite as charmed as she once thought. I'm really excited for this one. I'm going to be reading it hopefully before its release date, but we'll see. Also love the cover. It is gorgeous. So, moving into February. Now, we have a bunch more releases, but not quite as packed as January. We're starting off the month, though, on the 4th of February with The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. This is the start of a new duology, which kind of sounds like Bridgerton meets The Bachelor, which I like Bridgerton. I really enjoy The Bachelor, despite it being the kind of show it is. It's very trashy. I think it's also got a bit of a fantasy kind of dynamic too, though. It's been like likened to The Selection a lot, which is a series I kind of do want to read because I do like trashy reality TV like The Bachelor. This was getting a lot of hype at Yalk, and I never actually heard of it before Yalk, although I did recognise the cover. I honestly thought this was going to be a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I don't think it is, but please correct me if I'm wrong. But I am more intrigued by this now because I heard the author talk on a panel at Yalk, and she'd written another book which was about like historical witches, which I really liked the sound of and have now bought. So I'm now more intrigued about this book than I was because I just really loved hearing the author talk about her books, and I'm now kind of down to read this new book. Don't know if it is going to be good or not, or my thing, but I'm intrigued enough to give it a try, and people did seem to be really excited about it. Also on the 4th of February releasing is Wings of Starlight by Alison Saff. This is an author who released 2 books last year. I think she released Fragile Enchantment book with the seamstress, and she also released Dark and Drowning Tide, which is the sapphic dark academia one, which I'm very excited to read. But this is her new book, and this is actually like a Disney collaboration, I think. It's Tinkerbell inspired, and it's a romantic fantasy about the Queen of the Pixies, Clarion. In Tinkerbell lore, If you ever watch the Tinkerbell movies, I quite like them, to be honest. The Queen of the Pixies, I believe, is married, I think, to like the Queen of the Winter... The Queen, I wish. The King of the Winterfell. And I guess it's that story. So it sounds like it could be very predictable, but I am intrigued by it. And even more so intrigued because it's by Alison Saft, who I'm hoping will be an author I really love. Next, coming out on February the 11th, one of my most hotly anticipated books of the year is Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales by Heather Fawcett. This is possibly the end of the series, which I'm kind of sad about, but I love this series so much. This is a fantasy about these two rival academics. It's like a Grumpy Sunshine kind of thing, but our girl is the Grumpy, which I love. She is obsessed with fairy lore and she's trying to do academic work around it, basically. And I really liked where it went, and I'm enjoying the series a lot. It's not a 5-star sort of series for me, but it is a 4-star series, and I am excited to see where it's going. Coming out on February the 13th is a book that is a sequel to a book that I quite liked this year, but I'm not totally sold on it, but I'm very intrigued by the sequel. I actually have an ARC copy of it, but we've got a little chapter sample here that I got that I can show you here. And it is Children of the Night by M.A. Bennett. This is a YA gothic horror kind of book, and it's a sequel to Young Gothic, which came out last year, which I liked but had some issues with, I will say. Basically, this is about a group of 4 teenagers who are all kind of like social influencers in different ways that also relates them to the horror genre. They're all invited to the Villa Diadad, whatever it is, this villa, which is where like a group of gothic poets and authors all gathered, and where like Frankenstein was originally created by Mary Shelley. And they're all gathered there by this organization to essentially try and like recreate the process and be creative and create their own monsters, and things get weird and murdery and a bit supernatural. I quite liked it. It's also queer, but there was some issues I had with regards to the main female character that I don't think was particularly handled that well, but I liked it enough to want to carry on. I will hopefully have a review for it like prior to its release, because I do have the ARC to read, which I'm going to be reading in January. Next, also on February the 13th, is a book I'm quite excited for because I've only just read the first book by this author, and this is her second book, and that is The Sirens by Amelia Hart. This is the author of Wayward, which won the historical and the debut category of Goodreads last year, and this is following two sets of sisters in both 1800 and 2019, and I gather it's got something to do with mermaids and possibly a transformation story where the girls are turning into mermaids. I'm not too sure, but I really enjoyed Wayward, which was a historical fantasy following these 3 different women, different time periods that all have witchcraft running through the family lineage. Really enjoyed it. It had great Good for Her vibes. Excited to see what The Sirens is going to be like. It also has an April release date, which might be the American release. I'm not too sure. Next, on February the 13th, we have Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. This is the same author as Bitterthorn, which was a book I really enjoyed. It was like a queer, almost cozy, dark fairy tale kind of book about a witch that falls in love with a girl, vice versa. Really liked it. And this is a queer vampire horror retelling of Carmilla. That is all I need to know. I am down for this. Coming out on February the 18th, then, we have another sequel, and this is Cursebound by Sarah El Arifi, the sequel to Feybound, which is a trilogy, I believe. It's going to be. I haven't read this yet, but I really do want to read Feybound, and I think I'll love it. So I'm hoping I'll like Cursebound as well, but I'm just putting it out here because I am interested in Feybound, so I'll mention the sequel as well. And then the final book for February, another big month, are Infinite Fates by Laura Stevens. This was another book that was not on my radar, although I love the cover, until I went to Yalk, and it just sounded more and more interesting every time I was being told about it, basically. It's a YA romantasy, which, as we know, is not really my thing, about this 2 people that are kind of stuck in a curse together, where I believe they are bound to like fall in love and die or kill each other like life after life after life. And I think only one of them actually remembers this, and I guess it's about them breaking the curse. It sounds kind of typical, but I'm willing to give it a chance because people would seem to think it was really special. Right, moving into March, my birthday month, and we have yet another quite packed month, to be honest. It's more towards the latter half of the year where I start to not get as many releases. I get up to about like August or so, and then everything's a little bit sketchy after that point in time. But into March. So we have 2 books coming out on the 4th of March, and the first one is the new Ava Reid book, Fable for the End of the World. I've loved both books I've read by Ava Reid at this point in time, so I'm definitely going to be checking this out. This is a sapphic fantasy, first sapphic book she's written, I believe, set in a dystopian world. I believe it's possibly Greek inspired because of the names of the characters, but I don't really know a lot else about it. The cover is everything though. I love this cover so much. But yeah, it's Ava Reid, I'm gonna read it. Also on March the 4th then, we actually have a queer YA horror, which funnily enough, given I just talked about the sirens, it's also about mermaids, sea creatures or something. And this is They Bloom at Night by Trang Tran Tran. This is a YA horror about a girl whose family are rumoured to be descended from sea creatures. I am intrigued. I love the cover for this. It's so creepy. Sign me up. Coming out on the 11th of March is a cozy queer fantasy called Homegrown Magic by, I can't remember if this is 2 authors or it's one author with a pseudonym, but by Jamie Paxton and Rebecca Podus. I think this is 2 femme-presenting authors, actually. It looks like it's just fantasy-ish about plant magic, but I believe we have non-binary representation here of one of the characters, which I'm very down for. So that is on my radar. Coming out next on, it's either March the 13th or it's April the 1st. Could be an April Fool's Day joke, I don't know. But we have 2 dates for it in Goodreads. But we have Faithbreaker by Hannah Kaner. And this is the finale of the Fallen God series, which started with Godkiller. I've only read Godkiller at this point, but I really quite liked it. So I am intrigued to see where this is going. I like that these are not long fantasy books. I quite like that it's a little bit more bite-sized, but I think the world building is really interesting and I like the characters. So yeah, that is coming out then. March the 18th. And we have 3 books coming out on this day, and one of them is probably the one that everyone is excited for. We're getting Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, which is the new Hunger Games book. It is a prequel to the Hunger Games, focusing on Hamish, who is the mentor of Katniss and Peter in the original series. I'm very excited for it. I think everyone's very excited for it. I'm hoping it's going to be better than Songbirds and Snakes, which I haven't read yet, but I think I've heard enough to know that it's probably not quite the vibe with the Hunger Games, but this is. So I'm very intrigued about this one. Definitely going to be reading it. Also on the same day coming out, we have a sci-fi cozy mystery called Murder by Memory by Olivia White. This is about a spaceship, I think, where people's minds are kind of stored in the ship, and then people kind of transfer bodies. It's kind of like a way to be immortal, I think. And we're following a woman who is a detective. She wakes up and someone has been murdered. And not only are people's bodies being killed, the minds are also being, like, destroyed. Quite high stakes, to be honest, for a cozy sci-fi. I'm very intrigued by it, really love the cover, and yeah, sounds really interesting. Finally, the last one for March, we have The Prince Without Sorrow by, I'm gonna butcher this name, I'm so sorry, Mayfree Widjeskara. This has been getting a lot of hype recently. It has not 1 but 2 beautiful covers, and it is an Indian queer fantasy about an outcast prince and a vengeful witch. I think it's going to be in some book boxes, but I am intrigued by it. I'd seen like this cover around quite a lot, but I love this cover, it's so nice. Okay, going into April, we're finally starting to get less books now because I'm less aware of what's coming out. But the first book is one I'm very excited for. Coming out on April the 1st is The Last Session by Julia Bartz. She wrote one of my favourite thrillers of all time, which is The Writing Retreat. I really loved it. This is her new book, and it is about a social worker in New Mexico at a mysterious wellness retreat. It sounds like it could be a little bit Rouge-esque. I am really intrigued by this book. It's like it could possibly go in a bit of a supernatural way, which The Writing Retreat kind of did go weird, and I really liked it. So yeah, I'm gonna read it because I love The Writing Retreat. Next, coming out on the 8th of April is Boys with Sharp Teeth by Jenny Howell. This is very much, again, a cover buy book for me. I love the cover. I like the idea of this book, but I feel like it could also be very bad. This is a dark academia murder mystery with vampires. I think it's got like love triangle, maybe white shoes. I'd like it to be white shoes, to be honest, between a girl and these 2 boys. at this like boarding school, and I guess they're vampires. I'm intrigued. I don't know if I'm gonna like it, but I'll give it a shot. April the 8th or the 10th, not sure exactly which date, but we have the finale in the Library trilogy by Mark Lawrence. This one is The Book That Held Her Heart. I haven't read this series at all yet, but I love everything I've read by Mark Lawrence previously, so I'm excited for this. And then maybe I'll just be able to binge the whole trilogy, basically. Coming out on April the 15th, one that I really hope is actually going to be coming out on April the 15th. It was supposed to have come out last year, never did. Fingers crossed it does, but it is The Ashfire King by Chelsea Abdullah. This is a sequel to The Stardust Beef, which was an Arabian fantasy that I read at the beginning of 2023, I want to say, and loved. It was so good. Really good world building, great characters. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed it is actually coming out this year. Next, on the 22nd of April, we have a queer horror, which is kind of inspired by the Pet Shop of Horrors. Also, I've heard, and I don't know if I'm going to like this one, but I'm just intrigued. Like, I heard about this one on Kayla's Most Anticipated Books videos, and I'm kind of down for it. This is Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Maria Griffin. It is basically about a florist who I think falls for somebody, but one of her plants is in love with her and is a man-eating plant, and yeah. I'm interested where that's gonna go, so that is on my radar. And the final book coming out, I believe it's either April the 24th or it's the 9th of September. Very conflicting release dates here, but it is the sequel to Gaze Upon Wicked Gods by Molly X Chang. Now, she has another book coming out this year as well, so I'm a little like not quite sure what's happening with that. It is currently called To Kill These Monstrous Gods. I believe it was previously called To Kill a Monstrous Prince, so I'm really not sure what's happening with that. Someone please update me. I really enjoyed To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods. I know it had a bit of controversy around it, but I personally really liked it. And I am excited for the sequel to come out. I'm glad it's coming out next year, but we'll see because she has another book coming out. So I'm just kind of confused about that one. Into May. May the 6th. This is a book that I'm only putting on my radar because I may love the first book in the series, which I am about to read. We'll see, I guess. But it is the next book by James Islington in the Hierarchy series. It's a sequel to The Will of the Many, which I know people have really been loving, and it is called The Strength of the Few. There is no cover yet, although I believe there's controversy around the covers as well. So yeah, no cover, but I am intrigued. I'm hoping I really love The Will of the Many. Next, coming out on May the 6th, we have a gothic horror called The Manor of Dreams by Christina Lee. This is about two Chinese American families fighting over a mansion left to them by a Hollywood actress. I'm intrigued, just really intrigued by this. On my radar. Then also coming out on May the 6th, we have a novella actually called Brighter Than Scales, Swifter Than Flame by Neon Yang. This is a queer fantasy novella with dragons. I love the cover. That's all I need to know about it. I'm sold. Next, coming out on the 13th of May, and perhaps a bit of an unusual one for me. This is more of a literary fiction. But this is the new book by Ocean Wong, The Emperor of Gladness. It is a queer contemporary literary fiction about a young man who wants to unalive himself and then ends up looking after an elderly widow. I imagine it's going to be very touching, very heartfelt, and I really enjoyed Ocean Wong's other book, so it is on my radar to check this one out too. Next, coming out on either May the 13th or the 8th of July, not quite sure, is the sequel to Evocation by St. Gibson. This one is Ascension. I really enjoyed Evocation, so I'm very excited to see how the story is going to continue because we are now going to be switching character viewpoints, I suppose, over from David in the first book over to the other guy whose name I've forgotten because I suck. But yeah, we're going to be switching and I'm just intrigued because I feel like this was a not very well loved book and I actually really liked it. So I'm excited to see where it's going next. Coming out on either the 20th or the 22nd of May, this one is for all you horse girls out here. This is Behooved by M. Stevenson. This book is insane and I kind of want to love it. This is a horse girl romantasy. This is about a girl who I think is betrothed to a guy and then he gets turned into a horse and she has to run away with him. It has some chronic illness representation, which I'm really excited about, but I'm honestly just, this sounds insane, and I just want to see how insane it gets. Beautiful cover as well though. And the final book for May is a queer contemporary romance, which honestly, again, it's not even a cover buy, it's a title buy for me. This is And They Were Roommates by Paige Powers. It is got trans representation, and it is about two people who I believe used to be at school together, and then they end up obviously rooming with each other, I think at like college or university. And that's all I need to know. I'm kind of intrigued. It's a title for me. Comes out May 27th. Right, we are getting to the end now. We're hitting summer. Not many I've got for summer, actually, just two. But they're two I'm very excited for because they're by two authors that I really, really like. Coming out first on, I don't have the date for this apparently, but I'll put the date here. But we have the new V. Schwab book, which is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. It's a lesbian vampire book. I'm excited. That's all I need to know about it. It's V. Schwab, it's lesbian vampires, I'm here for it. Done. Also then coming out on the 24th of June, although it might be July for America, I'm not too sure. But this is A Treachery of Swans by A.B. Poranek. This is the same author of Where the Dark Stands Still, which I read early this year. Really like Polish fantasy romance kind of thing. But this book, however, is kind of different. This is a sapphic buzzword for me. A retelling of Swan Lake, also a buzzword for me. Told from the Dark Swan's point of view. Another gorgeous cover. I'm sold. I'm just so sold. Right, moving into July. This is when we have, I believe, the new book by Molly X. Chang, supposed to be coming out on the 1st of July. And this is The Nightblood Prince. Gorgeous cover. It is about a prophesied empress caught between two princes, I believe. I'll check it out because I liked the other book. That's all there is really to it. July the 1st. This one is kind of a niche one for me, but I feel like the author is going to gather some people to it that maybe weren't interested previously. You guys know that I love Critical Role. It is a D&D campaign. I'm not up to date anymore on it, sadly, because I just can't keep up with it. But they are releasing another novelization, except this one is actually a book that is a book in the campaign, which is a orc romance, smutty book, essentially. This is Critical Role Tusk Love is being written by Thea Guanzon, who is the author of the Hurricane Wars. Enough said. I'm probably gonna check it out. I don't really intend to read the Hurricane Wars, but the fact that we're getting quite a big romanticy author writing a smutty Critical Role book, yeah, I just want to see where this is going, basically. Coming out on July either the 3rd or the 17th, we have what I believe is going to be the finale to the Her Majesty's Royal Coven series by Juno Dawson. This is Human Rights. I'm so excited to find out what happens. Every single book has been a cliffhanger, and it's been so hard to wait for the next book in the series. I love this series so much. We won't talk about Queen Bee, that didn't happen. Really excited for this. July the 15th, then, we have a book that honestly, I'm more intrigued by this than I actually think is going to be good. But it's Medievally Blonde by Kate Jacobs. It's Legally Blonde but in medieval towns. That's all I need to know. Next, hopefully coming out on July the 15th. This was supposed to have come out last year, but sadly got delayed. We have the next book by Sangu Mandana. This is the, not quite a sequel, but I guess set in the same world as the Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. And this is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. This is a cozy fantasy kind of story, and it is about a witch that messes up, I think, loses her powers, and then travels away because she's been kicked out, essentially, to run an inn, and ends up having a little fox companion as well. I think there is going to be a romance in it, but I really enjoyed Very Secret Society of Regular Witches. I really hope this book's going to come out this year because I want it to come out so bad. The final book coming out, which I literally only heard about the other day, it's only just been announced, And this is the next book by Gareth Brown, who wrote the Book of Doors, coming out either July the 31st or 12th of August. It's a little bit hazy still, and I believe it's set in the same universe as the Book of Doors, which really interests me. And this is the Society of Unknowable Objects. Again, we're following like I think 3 people in this one that are all involved in the society to find these like magical items. I wonder if the magical books are going to come up into it, but I feel like this is different. But I've been really intrigued. I really enjoy Book of Doors, so I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next, basically. Okay, into August. Coming out on the very start of August, we have a book that I actually have a proof for, so I'll hopefully get to it before, but it is Girls of Dark Divine by Evie Woods. This is a YA gothic horror about a group of magically imprisoned ballet girls. I'm just intrigued. That's honestly all I need to do about it. It says in the here, discover the enthralling gothic fantasy laced with dark magic, electrifying romance, and burning rage. It is a romantasy, it says, but I feel like we're going to get a lot of female rage in this. Oh, there's a map. That's fun. There's a New Korea and Parisia. Oh, okay, it's set in like alternate France, I believe. Oh, there's like a note from the author at the front. In its essence, Girls of Dark Divine is a narrative about an abusive relationship, which means it does explore some very dark themes. Although there is no sexual violence, there are scenes depicting loss of bodily autonomy and uncomfortable moments in which the male villain asserts his belief in his ownership over the female characters through physical violence. There are also scenes of manipulation and gaslighting throughout that may make some readers uncomfortable, as well as some instances of light gore. So please remember to be kind to yourself as you read, and know that it's okay to walk away if you need to. I like that she said that. I like she's just like, don't carry on if it's making you upset. I feel like I needed that when I read the pairing. With that being said, I hope you enjoy getting lost in the darkness of La Theatre de Fou and see you on the other side. Sounds really interesting. It is just under 400 pages and it is a debut as well. Next, another really anticipated one for me coming out on August the 5th, we have the sequel to A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. So she has 2 books coming out next year. This is A Theory in Dreaming by Ava Reid, and I believe this is going to be following from Preston's perspective, who is the main male love interest. And I'm intrigued, not gonna lie. I really thought Study in Drowning was going to be a standalone, but I'm not mad about it. Also love the cover. We'll see, because this was very recently announced, it may get pushed back. Next, coming out on the 14th of August is something that is perhaps not my usual, but I read the first chapter of this in a chapter sampler at Yalc and I really enjoyed it. This is Tart by Becca Jane Crossley. Super cute artwork here on the back. This is a contemporary YA sapphic romance, and it's got baking in it, so I'm very down. Bisexual representation, I think, is in this, and yeah, it just sounded like it was going to be really good. I really liked the main character. Coming out on the 19th of August, we have the new T. Kingfisher book, which is called Hemlock and Silver. It is a Snow White retelling, so maybe I'll do another Fae retellings video when that comes out, because it could be a good one for it. And it is a fantasy, not a horror. We know that, yeah, T. Kingfisher writes both genres, but this is definitely going to be in her fantasy line rather than horror. Coming out then on the 19th of August, I literally only found out about this morning from Kayla's like 2025 most anticipated books video. This is The End of the World as We Know It, New Tales of Stephen King's The Stand, coming out on the 19th of August. Honestly, say no more, this sounds up my alley. This is an anthology of people who have written stories set in the world of The Stand, which is a Stephen King post-apocalyptic kind of book. It's more sci-fi than it is horror, but I really loved that book. It was the book that got me into Stephen King. So I am going to be checking this out because I'm really intrigued, and there's a whole bunch of different horror authors that have written stories for this anthology. Last ones for August. We have a book that is a bit of a hear me out book, I feel, but I'm intrigued because I really liked the author's first book that came out. This is Voidwalker by S.A. McLean, coming out on August the 21st. This is the same author as The Phoenix Keeper, which released earlier this year, which was a queer, cozy fantasy book set in a magical zoo. Really enjoyed it. This is a new romantasy series from her, which has bisexual representation and a monster romance. I don't know if it's for me, but I really like the Phoenix Keeper, so I guess I'm gonna try it. We'll see. Final book of August, which I think is one that everyone knows about and is excited by now, but I'll just mention it anyway. Coming out on August the 28th is R. Kwong's latest book, Catabasis. This is a Greek-inspired dark academia fantasy, basically like set in this like magic school kind of thing. It's about a girl who is a magic student. Her professor, who is a very talented magician, dies. I believe she is somehow kind of involved in it. So she and another academic rival of hers have to go on a journey to hell to get him back. It sounds fun. I loved Yellowface from R. Kwong, so I'm gonna be checking this out for sure. We are almost at the end, so let's wrap this up quickly. September, we have queer fairy tale inspired fantasy called The Maiden and Her Monster by Maddie Martinez, coming out on September the 9th. That's all I need to know about it really, I'm sold. September the 11th, we have a new book by Sarah El-Arifi, who released Feybound and the Final Strife series. This is a historical fantasy retelling called Cleopatra. Very intrigued. Apparently the book is going to be starting from her becoming pharaoh, so I'm glad it's not like her life prior, so I'm expecting some really good like female power kind of stuff. September the 25th, we have a sequel to a book I haven't read yet, but I'm intrigued. Regardless, this is a sequel to Rewitched, and it is Uncharmed by Lucy Jane Wood. And then the final book for September, fingers crossed, I don't know if this is going to get pushed back or not, but we are rumoured to have the sequel to The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty come out. There is no cover yet, there is no title yet, so I don't know, but I really hope so because I loved that book so much. It is a pirate fantasy about a retired female pirate who has to go and get the gang back together for one last adventure. Loved it. It was so good. It was one of my favourite books of the year. Okay, into October. This is the last month I have like actual dates for. Anything else coming out after that point in time, I'm not currently aware of. But October, we have a new St. Gibson book coming out on October the 9th. This is Savage Blooms. There is no cover at the moment, but it is apparently going to be a gothic queer fantasy set in Scotland about two Americans searching for a legendary cave. I am intrigued because this sounds contemporary, and I feel like she's mostly always written historical. I haven't read Education in Malice yet, so I could be wrong. Having said that, Evocation is also contemporary, but I always forget it's contemporary. I always think it's like set further back for some reason. It's St. Gibson. I'm going to read it. October the 23rd, we have a new book by M.A. Kuznia. This is the author of Midnight in Everwood. She also wrote Upon a Frosted Star, which I haven't read yet, but I really enjoyed Midnight in Everwood, which was like a nutcracker fantasy historical book. This is Forest of Hearts, and it is a retelling of Snow White. So that's two retellings of Snow Whites we have coming out. And the movie's coming out as well, which I probably won't watch, but it is a big year for Snow White fans, apparently next year. Maybe I should just do a whole, like, for my favourite retellings thing, do a whole Snow White retellings blog, because there is so much of it. And then the final book coming out, which is probably a book that I am one of the few people excited for it, but I am so excited for it. Coming out on October the 28th. It is a sequel to Blood of Hercules. This is Bonds of Hercules by Jasmine Mass. I am so excited for this book. I need this in my hands right now. I was obsessed with Blood of Hercules when I read it. This is a modern day-ish kind of take on Greek mythology, only it's actually Spartans. Our main girl finds out she is like descended from a god. She has to go through a brutal training. She's not having it. She's not having a good time. I love this book so much. So yeah, very excited for the sequel. I can't wait for it. I don't have any other books that have actual dates. I'm just gonna yell about one other book two other books that may be coming out either next year or the year after. One of the books is going to be whatever is the new book that Frances White is coming out with. She wrote Voyage of the Damned. Really love that book. I know she's been saying that the paperback of Voyage of the Damned is coming out in the start of 2025, and there is going to be a preview in there of what her new book is going to be. So I don't know if that means it's going to be coming out in 2025 or if it's coming out later, but I really can't wait to see what she's doing next. And the final book is whatever is the new book by the Honey Witch author, Sydney J. Shields. I don't really know. I feel like it might be Swan Lake based, but I'm not sure. I think it's possibly also Polly, which I'm quite happy about. That is all the books that I currently am excited for coming out in 2025. Please let me know down below if there's any that you're either also really excited for, or if there's any that you think, judging by what I've talked about, I should really be aware of and maybe add to my TBR. That is it. Sorry this was so long. I'm just excited for all the books. Until next time, stay safe, stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!